All right, we're going to take a look at a video. The man featured in the video is Richard Dawkins. I believe he's a cellular biologist, but he is famous for being one of the four horsemen of the new atheist movement. This is sort of a play on the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Um, and and so these guys, I was cutting my teeth theologically and biblically in my 20s, and these guys were really prominent. It was Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett, I think were the four. And their writings were very prominent, and in many ways, I was very intimidated by their arguments. And yeah, I have some of their books, but I was afraid to read them at first because I didn't want to lose my faith. And I offered myself up in some respects to opponents of the faith to explain things better than I perhaps understood them through the lens of Christianity, and and in so doing, I kind of put myself out there. But I was, if I'm not, if I'm being honest with you, I was intimidated by these guys because they seemed to have the backing of all the smart people and the scientific establishment, and who was I really, who was I to question them. But you look at simple things like what do they do with the word faith, and how badly do sometimes even smart people misunderstand simple words. A word that I misunderstood and misapplied and misused for a long time growing up as a Christian. And I regret having misused it for so long. But that's the word faith. And so we're going to watch this real quick clip by Richard Dawkins talking about faith and rationality. And then I'll just offer a few points to think about as you encounter it. You deal with people that talk about faith, and how do you think about that? Maybe you're coming from a perspective of somebody who doesn't believe, and so maybe you are tempted to think in terms of the least respectable version of or caricature of what faith means to you. And I hope after watching this video, at least you'll operate with the same understanding of the word faith that maybe not every Christian has. They should have, but at least the word, the word faith as it is seems to be defined by the Bible, because that's where we should be getting our definitions of faith. But let's take a look at this short clip by Richard Dawkins, and then we'll come back with a few comments after it's finished.
When you say faith is rational and evidence-based, I mean, if that were true, it wouldn't need to be faith, would it? I mean, if there were evidence for it, why would you need to call it faith? You'd say just evidence. And when you said that faith in relativity, in Einstein's theory of relativity, is evidence-based, that of course it is. But the evidence is all important. I mean, Einstein's predictions fit in with observed fact and with a whole body of theory, whereas we only need to use the word faith when there isn't any evidence.
Yeah, so this is the misuse. We only need to use the word faith when there isn't any evidence, as if the two words are antithetical to one another. Actually, this is completely incorrect. In fact, if you think about the word confidence, when we have confidence, nobody thinks about religious connotation when it comes to the word confidence. But if you break that word down, it comes to us from the Latin con fide, uh, con meaning with, and fide meaning faith, with faith. So scientists that are confident in their positions, they are with faith or with belief, with trust that what their conclusions, the conclusions that they hold are true and rational and reasonably derived. In the same way, the word faith, as applied to religious belief, is not different. In fact, I used to think that. I used to think, man, if I could prove this thing, then it must not be about faith. And so I would be concerned if somebody could prove that Jesus was the Son of God, if he could prove that he rose from the dead, if he could prove, if somebody could prove all these things. I had this like sort of inverse idea of faith, that it was a negative thing, that if I if it could be proven, then it wasn't a matter of faith, and that would shake my faith. But then I encountered, and I sort of discovered or came to know better what the word faith means in a biblical sense. And we have a definition. We don't need to worry about, we don't need to use our own definitions and worry that they're not accurate. We have a definition given to us through the author of Hebrews in the Bible. So Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. Now that sounds like faith. That sounds kind of the typical faith that we were hoping that it's going to come true. Faith is a substance of things hoped for. The second part of that is the evidence of things not seen. It's the evidence of things not seen. And so we don't see necessarily all the details that we'd like to see, but we see enough to reasonably deduce that there is a God. We think about the wind. You don't see the wind, but you see the effects of the wind, and nobody questions the wind. In the same way, I think that we have every reason in the world to deduce logically that there is a creator. We look at a painting. Nobody wonders if there was a painter. We know that there's a painter. Instinctively, we know there was a painter. If there's a building, we know that there is a builder. And we think about the cosmos, and we think about uh, the design in the universe, and the fact that we can predict things, that we can come up with equations and things like this. The fact that we can do that and we can observe the universe. These are all signs that this is incredibly complex and ordered. The universe is incredibly ordered so that we can not only define these parameters and come up with these equations and observe the universe, can kind of predict some things, and that's an incredibly complex yet ordered world that we live in, to say nothing of the human body and everything else. Um, but I think that we look at all of that, and it's a logical deduction to say we see a painting, we conclude a painter. We see a building, we conclude a builder. We see a creation. I think it's logical to conclude a creator. I would have a lot more to say about that, because that's another subject we can get into. But just from this point on, maybe if you've been operating with the wrong assumptions behind what the word faith means to Christians, and maybe that cheap Hallmark sort of cartoon version of faith is what a lot of Christians do operate with, and they should have a better definition of faith than that. But just understand that there is a better definition, and it's the one that the Bible gives, and it's not a blind leap into the dark. It's actually a confident step out into the light. Is a way that you can think about it. So, you may still conclude that we're irrational to believe what we believe, but let's not make the mistake of thinking that there's no rationality that goes into it. God bless.